Wolves rack up another win. They do it this time, though, without the help of Anthony Edwards. I got Wolves expert Jack Borman to help me break it all down, and it's coming up next on the Locked On Wolves postcast.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Wolves, they moved to 14-4, 9-1 at home now. They take care of business versus the Jazz tonight, and they do it all without the help of Anthony Edwards as he deals with that hip pointer injury. We'll touch on that, but what's happening, everyone? Thanks for joining. Back in the lab, back at it with another T-Wolves postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman, on Twitter, at JRBorman13. Jack, before we jump into all the action, quick reminder, this episode, it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, brother, let's just jump right into this one. We got a lot to cover. Wolves win it 101-90. They kind of looked a little sluggish right out the gate in this one. They got down 12 early, but end up putting on quite the avalanche, I'll call it, in the second half. Their largest lead of the night was 20 points. They take care of business, continue to stay hot. Let's just start with your biggest takeaways, the major headlines from this one. Another successful night at the Target Center.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really fun night, especially to watch, some of these guys that we haven't seen be able to perform on that level quite yet. Really get it done in a major way for the Timberwolves. I think first off, like the biggest takeaway in this one has to be what Nickeil Alexander-Walker was able to do for the Timberwolves in this game. I believe he drew 6 illegal screens. Six illegal screens.
That's a great stat.
By my count, I could be off by one there if there was one in the fourth quarter that I missed. And again, just probably the best offensive game we've seen from him thus far in a Timberwolves uniform. 20 points on 8 of 16 shooting, 4 of 8 from 3, really 4 of 7 with that heave. 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 5 steals. I believe that is a career high for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and 2 blocks. Wow. Hard to really say or really understate, what he did, it's hard to overstate what he did in this game. I just really appreciated his energy on the defensive end of the floor. He made everything tough for Jazz rookie Keyonte George, who is the first draft pick that is conveyed in that Rudy Gobert trade. Did an awesome job holding him to 4 of 19 shooting. He had 12 points and only, I believe, 9 of those came from the floor. 3 of them came at the free throw line. So just hounded George all night long, made every handoff and screen really difficult for Utah to execute. So he definitely gets the game ball tonight. And then beyond that, I don't think any of us really needed any reminder, but KarlAnthony Towns can absolutely still be that number 1 scorer. Even on nights when Anthony Edwards is playing, just a really efficient game from him. I think that, some people might have wondered what the efficiency from Karl would look like with him getting more shots, but he's proven time and again that he can scale his game up or down, however this team needs, and still find ways to be extremely efficient. He had 32 points on 22 shots, was 4 of 7 from 3, 4 or 5 from the free throw line. And also had 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block. I understand that the Jazz are missing guys, and he's going up against a smaller guy in John Collins, but still an awfully impressive performance from him and exactly what the Timberwolves needed. When they didn't have Anthony Edwards, they had a very clear plan of getting him the ball and going right at John Collins, and he bullied John Collins a couple weeks ago at Target Center as well. So nice to be able to see him stack a couple of good performances here against a really poor Jazz team that is certainly rebuilding and obviously was missing its best player and one of the truly best players in the league in Lauri Markkanen, which was a big loss for them, and not having Jordan Clarkson, another big offensive engine, was key for them. But yeah, still just overall another game that you're just really thrilled that the Timberwolves were able to grab firm control of this one and never really let go, and again just take care of business against a team that is certainly inferior to them.
Yeah, well said. And you're right, man. John Collins, you could just see it. You don't need to know a ton of basketball to sit down and watch tonight. John Collins, no match tonight, physically down low tonight versus Cat. And I think when one stud goes down like Ant, I think it's easy to say, okay, well, it's time for a big Rudy game. That it doesn't always work like that. It's not always that simple. But Cat, like you mentioned, just showed out tonight. It was nice to see. How nice was it to see him put up a game like this, I guess? And also, what does it do for the psyche, the confidence to win a game in the way they did without your best player, even if it is, like you mentioned, versus a below 500 team?
Yeah, I think for Karl, it's just, probably really nice for him just to be able to remind his teammates too that, like, hey, I know Ant's a great scorer and is our number one guy that we look to get going offensively, but like I can still do this too. And the other thing is, like, he played a lot of minutes alongside Rudy Gobert tonight. I think, Karl had a stretch for about 5 minutes at the start of the second quarter, and then another 5-minute stretch late third, early fourth, where he didn't play with Rudy. But I mean, most of his minutes came alongside Rudy Gobert, and he was able to prove, yet again tonight that, even with Rudy out there, it's still not really a huge problem for him to be able to score, which is great. I think, he probably drove the ball a little bit too much for my liking. I think more often than not, when he wasn't driving the ball, he got the ball in a left box post up and was really attacking, did really well. And then obviously shot the 3-ball really well. I think, a lot of times when he was pumping and going and didn't quite get past his defender on that first step of that first dribble, he really struggled. That's when you saw him, throw up some wild layup attempts and end up on the ground and didn't get back in transition. I want to say it was 3 or 4 times where Karl was on the ground after a drive and a missed layup that the Jazz scored on the other end playing 5-on-4. So, that's something that he's got to clean up a little bit, but certainly got to be nice for him to, be able to do it efficiently, right? And get to his spots on the floor and really be a great outlet for, for the Timberwolves guards, because Utah was playing some pretty aggressive, perimeter defense at the level of the screen, and Minnesota took full advantage with Karl picking and popping.
Yeah, well said there again. And even in the comment section, winning games they should win. That's the big difference. And we've said it a lot, but these are the games this team would sometimes find a way to lose last year. And the sign of any great team, again, turning the corner always starts winning your games at home. Wolves move to 9-1 at the Target Center easily. Their best start of the franchise, which is just incredible to say out loud. I still can't believe that. Coming in, I was just really curious tonight what kind of offensive package they'd show with no Ant. What'd you see on that front tonight outside of, not a big game? Cat had a big game while Ant's still dealing with that hip injury, because we've talked about how the Wolves need a third scorer on this show. You and I have had that conversation. It was like never more evident than one of your stud goes down those first 10 minutes or so, and kind of came to the conclusion, okay, Naz Reid is really going to have to be the guy to carry the brunt of that load tonight. That was my first thought. And then, like you mentioned, Na goes on to have the game he does. He was superb. But just talk to me, I guess, about what you saw differently tonight offensively than what we're used to seeing with Ant when he's in the lineup. What did we learn tonight as far as that front goes?
Yeah, this one isn't really super intuitive, but the Timberwolves were awesome in transition. And this is something that, has been kind of odd that Ant specifically and the Timberwolves with Ant in the lineup haven't been an awesome transition team this year. They both by frequency and by offensive rating. And tonight we really saw them get out and run. They did an awesome job of outletting the ball after they got stops and after they got defensive rebounds. They also did a great job, converting live ball steals into points going the other way, especially Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But the Timberwolves won the fast break 25-5 tonight. It was the second most fast break points they've had in a game this season. The first was when they scored 26 against Utah, I believe on November 4th. So obviously was probably part of the game plan here against a Utah team that has struggled in transition this year. But yeah, and then again, they tied a season high with 30 assists. I want to say they had 29 with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then obviously, they kind of didn't take the game as seriously as they needed to from there on out. But 29 assists on 39 made field goals. They really shared the ball. There really wasn't a whole lot of ISO ball. I think the most amount of ISO ball we saw was a pump and go from KarlAnthony Towns, which is really just attacking a closeout, which, I don't necessarily think you'd classify as ISO ball. And you wouldn't classify, a post up in an advantageous position as ISO ball either. But obviously that's, that makes sense without someone that's as good at scoring in isolation as Anthony Edwards is. But yeah, I was kind of right there with you that I was thinking it was going to be a good matchup for Naz Reid, just considering that he's so much quicker than both of the centers that Utah deployed, and Omer Yurtseven and Walker Kessler. But that just wasn't the case. Had 6 points on 9 shots, so an uncharacteristically inefficient night from Naz. And then beyond that, I mean, really they didn't get a whole lot of scoring outside of Karl and Nickeil, right? And Karl and Nickeil had 52 points. The rest of the roster had 49. So it wasn't a great bench night either. Every single bench guy, I mean, you see Anderson, 2 of 7, Naz, 3 of 9, Milton, 2 of 7, Desean Nix, 1 of 5. And a lot of those shots were like wide open shots. And they got crushed on the bench. I think it was 38-18 at bench points. So, yeah, I mean, you really thought that it was going to kind of be Karl leading the way. And then, you weren't really sure after that. Mike Conley was joking after the game the other night saying that he was going to take, 20 shots and replace all that. But then he got in foul trouble. Missed his first 3-point attempts, which was unfortunate for him. All those were great looks. So I think if Ant misses another game, I think you'll see more Mike Conley, assuming he's not in foul trouble. But yeah, they didn't really replace much of Ant's scoring, funny enough. But yeah, it was great to see them get out in transition and run and really share the ball were the two biggest takeaways offensively beyond really strong individual games from
yeah, they end with 30 assists total. So again, like you pointed out, great game there. And I know it's only one game, but how much better do we or should we feel about the bench once this team is fully healthy now? I mean, the game he just had, Troy Brown Jr., man's impressed the last 2 nights. Slow-mo, Naz, McLaughlin eventually. I mean, just on paper, how much better should, I guess, Wolves fans feel now after seeing what some of these role guys have done the past few games?
Yeah, and I actually just saw a stat correction come in. So the Timberwolves had 29 assists, not 30. So 29 assists on 39 made shots. But yeah, I think you got to feel pretty good about the bench depth right now and some of the scoring they could get, especially Troy Brown Jr., right? I think he's probably the most consistent scoring threat that you could get outside of Naz Reid, I'd think, off the bench. I think Nickeil, really waxes and wanes with his scoring confidence, and kind of certain matchups I think are more conducive to him scoring more. Whereas I think, Troy Brown Jr. should always try to get up 4 or 5 corner threes a day, corner slot threes a game. And he's a guy that can attack closeouts and get to the rim, and is probably a more bankable bet to score 10 plus points consistently than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But the good news is, like, when you have 4 guys coming off the bench, when this team is fully healthy, if you get 2 of them to get to that double-digit mark every night, I think that'd be awesome, right? And so that kind of gives, all those guys some margin for error, which again is just another great, I guess, luxury that you can have when you've got a really deep bench, and that, the pressure isn't quite on all those guys as much as it would be if, they had 7 really good players and then everyone else was kind of a wild card. But they really do have 9 really solid guys at this point that you've got to feel good about, which is, something very few teams in the NBA can say, which is obviously a great thing and bodes well for this team moving forward, especially on nights when Ant may not have it going, or Karl may not have it going, or, one or both of those guys may be out due to, injury or rest or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, Desean Nix got a little run. I want to pick your brain about him after an ad here, but last one on the offense real quick. They said it on the broadcast, so it got my wheels turning. It'd just be interesting, kind of fun to see the big boys, Rudy, Cat, and Naz, all on the court at the same time. Could that happen? Is it not a good idea? If not, why? Explain that one to me.
Yeah, it's something that I think Chris Finch is going to be willing to do. So when Chris Finch coached overseas before he came to the NBA and the G League, coaching in, all these different places, a lot of his best players were 2 or 3 big men. And so he's more than experienced with those types of lineups and how to try to, create an offensive system that can work with those players out there. And the good news is that you have guys like Naz and Karl who can both really shoot the 3 and play off of each other and coexist pretty peacefully offensively. But yeah, I think you'd see it in a matchup where a team is going smaller but isn't super quick, like against a Golden State. I think that would be an interesting matchup. I think you could see it against a team like Memphis next week. Hell, you could even see it against a team like Charlotte coming up here, where you might not. You're probably not going to have LaMelo Ball, and so some of those more of those rotation players are going to be bigger, slower guys that you want to try to match up with more physically and get inside and really pound the paint. So I think that obviously the downside of it is just the defense. Like if you're going up against a team that's got some quick guys on the floor, you're probably just going to get beat to the rim, or beat running around screens with shooters. We've seen that happen with Karl a few times at the 4. So that could certainly happen. But yeah, I think the pros are you'd really hope that you'd be able to crash the offensive glass and create second chances. And the Wolves did an awesome job of that, with 2 bigs on the floor tonight. And so, the hope is just to be able to get into the rim or get into the paint, score in there, and then, and then just really physically impose their will defensively and use that length to really bother a team that may not have, quick guys on the floor.
Well said. I got a few more for you on this one, but first, a quick word from our sponsors over at Game Time. Quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by Game Time, because you should never have to worry when buying tickets to any big event. That's why Game Time, it's the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets to any local event, concerts, comedy shows, sporting events, even Broadway theater, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from the seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Personally, for me, I love that view from the seat feature they offer, so I can get a real look and accurate visual on where my seats are going to be, so I know exactly what to expect before spending all that money. And with their all-in prices, Game Time shows you exactly how much you're spending with no hidden fees. It's time to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and see for yourself just how easy it is. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, just create any new account, redeem your code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Game Time, terms apply. Just curious on this one. Coming in, Utah last in the league in turnovers. Wolves 25th in the league in turnovers. Not that much better. Tonight, kind of more of the same, 21-12. Jazz finished with 20 points off turnovers in this one. Without me looking up every individual stat, I guess, who's been at fault for the Wolves I'm talking about, knowing that they rank 25th in the league. Just what's your 2 cents, I guess, on the turnover struggles for the Wolves thus far?
Yeah, I think it's mostly been when guys like Anthony Edwards and KarlAnthony Towns and Naz Reid try to dribble too much in heavily congested areas on the floor against a defense that's really packing the paint. So that's obviously a problem. And I think, and the Timberwolves just don't really move the ball or don't really, do much with the possession. Then it gets late clock and you're just kind of throwing the ball around. I think that happens too, as well. And I think really, they've eliminated a lot of the careless pass turnovers. I think sometimes you saw a few of them tonight when they were up big and weren't just taking things quite as seriously, but they had some really big problems with outletting the basketball early in the season, particularly Karl, and he threw a ton of great outlet passes tonight, which was a good sign. So I think it's really just, trying to pass out of, kind of like a stack box, right? Like if a running back can avoid, if a quarterback sees 8 in a box and feels good that it's a run blitz, you try to audible out of that to some type of quick pass to the outside or something like that. It's kind of similar when, you're driving at the top of the key and you see 2 or 3 guys right there loaded up on you. You probably want to get rid of the ball so that, you don't dribble into too much traffic to a point where then you can't pass out of it. So I think the Timberwolves have been doing a better job of recognizing that. I think they've done a good job too of settling in after having bad turnover quarters. I want to say they had like 4 or 5 turnovers in the first quarter and then had none in the second quarter. So things like that are really important to see from this team. And, obviously when you have a guy like Mike Conley, who I want to say right now is top 5 in assist to turnover ratio in the NBA, that'll obviously, help settle things down. And the same kind of goes for someone like Kyle Anderson when Mike Conley is off the floor. So. it's nice to at least know that they've got a couple of antidotes to that problem with turning the ball over.
Yeah, no, that's a good point there. Hey, what stuck out the most in the Rudy versus Walker Kessler matchup? Obviously, Kessler, the guy the Wolves drafted first round last year, packaged for Rudy. He looked outstanding last year. Rudy struggled, so everyone was obviously very upset about that. Funny how the tides have turned, though, and changed on that front through these first, 22 games. Just give me your quick scouting report, kind of recap on that matchup and how dominant Rudy has been. And I know Walker's been hurt, but still a nice performance from him again tonight.
Yeah, I think that, Rudy Gobert is just putting the fear of God in people, right? The way that
Tell us how you really feel, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at, there was a Keontae George possession where he saw, he dribbled baseline, I think on the right baseline, and then saw Rudy Gobert like help to him in the short corner. And he just literally did like Kevin from The Office with the chili, dropping it all over the floor with the ball. It's just that type of feeling that he puts in other people, right? And we saw it against Chet. Like, he's taking some of these matchups personally. I mean, Rudy Gobert is probably thinking, hey, they wanted Walker Kessler over me. And who cares about the direction the franchise is going? Like, you probably take that personally, right? And so I think he's done a really great job of making all these matchups uncomfortable, right? So when a guy catches the ball on the perimeter, even if they're not a shooting threat like Walker Kessler isn't, if it's a handoff situation, he's been right there to just kind of make them feel uncomfortable, so that, sometimes they put the ball on the deck and no one's there and they kind of start to feel a little loose and comfortable with it. And then Gobert's right there to kind of, switch it up and catch them off guard. And then at the rim, he's just done such a good job of boxing these guys out and keeping them from impacting the game on the offensive glass. And then on the offensive end of the floor is where you're honestly kind of seeing it the most, right? Where he hit Kessler with that super nice spin move after an entry pass. I think it was from Karl, kind of in the middle of the floor. He's backed some guys down and dunked on him. We saw that with Chet a couple of times. I just think that he's feeling as confident as he ever has. And I think part of that is just because, you're seeing the proof of concept with him kind of being the head of the snake of this defense and the defense being the identity of this team. How could you not feel confident, right? Like, you're on a team that's more talented by far than any of the other Utah teams that he was on, has a more realistic shot of winning a title. And he's, arguably been the biggest reason why the team is off to this 14-4 start. So when you match health with confidence, with, swagger and kind of, having some games circled and just kind of those feelings that get you going and the added adrenaline. I think you just see some of these incredibly dominant and disciplined too, which is important to put out there too, considering, when you circle a game, it might be hard to be disciplined at points, but he's really, checked all those boxes, and it's been really fun to watch.
I know you guys touched on this topic on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Go check out that episode every Wednesday, by the way. But is Rudy playing himself into the DPOY right now, Defensive Player of the Year? Like, what's your take on that, how Rudy's been defensively thus far? And again, just give us the 30, 60-second snippet. And then again, just a little tease. I feel like everybody can go check out that episode if they missed it from last Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure. I think that if the season ended today, Rudy Gobert would be the Defensive Player of the Year. He's currently the odds-on favorite. I think by a good little margin there.
What are we talking? Minus 200, minus 250? Where are we at?
I think it's probably more like minus 110 plus 130.
Still the heavy favorite.
I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at it. I just know that he's the favorite. But I think the other aspect of it too is just the rim deterrence, right? Like, I think you can look at his block numbers, bouncing back up this year. But, when you turn on the film and you see teams just not even wanting to go to the rim or get in the paint because Rudy Gobert is there, that's a massive factor. And then when you see him flying around on the perimeter on switches and shutting down, drives from guards and opposing wings that are quicker than him, he's contesting shots like a madman. He's staying down on pump fakes and then moving his feet when guys try to attack off the catch. I mean, literally anything you could ask him to do, he's done it, and he's done it at an incredibly high level. He's done it without fouling. So he's been able to stay in all these games. He's been healthy. He's played in every single game so far for the Timberwolves this season. And, I think this was the 7th time the Timberwolves have held a team under 100 points this year, which is I think, tying with the lead with the Knicks, and Gobert's been, every bit the catalyst for that. So just really hard to deny the impact that he's made on that end of the floor. And then team success and the Timberwolves being the best defense in the league obviously carry a lot of weight towards that award.
For sure. Yeah, Rudy now with at least 2 blocks in every game this season. That leads the NBA. Just real quick, Desean Nick's got a little bit of run. What's the scouting report on him for people who don't know coming over from Houston this offseason?
Yeah, he was seemingly one of the 10 6'5" guards that the Timberwolves acquired this offseason. Is just a much bigger, more physical guard that really kind of likes to bang on the perimeter in a sense of kind of getting downhill and some of the pick and roll and get physical and play in the paint, something that he did really well with G League Ignite. He's got pretty good shot mechanics, which is obviously something that's important. He missed a few open ones tonight, but was able to knock down that corner 3 finally, which had to feel good for him. But yeah, just a really big physical guy that's good at using his size to his advantage, especially when he's driving. Has a good amount of length too, and can make some good passes at different angles, which has been important. Not the best defender in the world, is a little slow of feet on that end, but yeah, I definitely like the pickup there for the Wolves, especially considering how it's played out with McLaughlin being hurt and Shake Milton not giving you the best minutes he can. So it'll be fun to see him be able to potentially contribute here if Anthony Edwards misses another game, or you see one of those two, Conley or Milton, get into foul trouble.
2 more quickies to close, but first, quick word from FanDuel. Quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line wager. That means all you got to do is find the best money line bet you like, wager $5, you win that bet, you're getting $150 in bonus bets back. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on all the action. The app, it's so easy to use. And they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, you name it. FanDuel's got it. They got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season. And again, it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. Go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. Last couple before we wrap up here. Wild to think we're already over a quarter of the way through this season. That can't be right. There's no way. But apparently, Wolves' next 5 games. Here you go. At Charlotte, without LaMelo, as you mentioned. Spurs at home, who have really kind of fallen back down to earth. I think they're 3-14 right now. At Memphis, who we just saw. At the Pelicans, and then at Dallas. So 4 of 5 on the road, but a combined winning percentage of just .384. Can they carry this momentum with them now, the Wolves, that is, on the road? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they can for sure. I mean, you see these next 4, or I guess you started with tonight, and then the next 4, whatever it was, were against teams that weren't obviously weren't great, like you said, and then 11 of 15 on the road, and I think all 11 of those games are against playoff caliber teams. So yeah, it'll be really exciting to see what this team looks like against a fully loaded Pelican squad that those two teams played an amazing game right around Christmas time last year, where Zion set a career high with 43 points and scored 15 points in the last 2 minutes of the game, which was insane. So I think it'll be a really good test of, I don't want to say how legit this team is, because I think we know that this is a really formidable team, especially with the wins over the likes of a fully loaded Celtic squad, I guess minus Derek White, but the Nuggets were fully loaded. The Thunder were fully loaded. So they played a lot. The Knicks were fully loaded. So they've played a lot of really good teams and played really well in those games. But I think to be able to string those types of games and performances together on the road, when you're tired and you're not home and you're not able to maybe access the same, facilities and recovery that you might when you're at home, is going to be a great test of this team. But I think, if you want to try to look for a positive in an extended road stretch like that, is I think if you're able to, let's say 11 of those 15, if you're able to go, let's call it 6-5 or 7-4 in those games, I think that's a really positive development. And then too, this team hasn't spent a ton of time on the road together. Obviously they're in Abu Dhabi, which was probably a great team bonding experience for them. But considering that they've only really had one prolonged road trip so far, and some of those games weren't as competitive as we thought they might be, this will just be a really good experience for the guys to just spend more time together, get to know each other a little bit better off the floor. You'll be able to talk a lot more basketball than you do because you're just together more on the road than you are when you're at home, and guys kind of go home after games and do their own thing and all that type of stuff. So I certainly think they can keep it going, and defense is normally something that travels if you bring that kind of that same energy and effort that they've been bringing on a nightly basis. And I think, no, there's probably some intrinsic, I've got to play better, I've got to step it up, or I've got to play harder, on the road than maybe you do at home. Especially against a team that, is a playoff caliber team that you could see, especially in the Western Conference, especially like a team like New Orleans that's given them problems in the past. So it'll be a great test. It'll be a ton of awesome basketball, I think. And certainly, win or lose, I think it'll be, just an eye-opening stretch for this team and how they're able to respond to, some adversity on the schedule. And then, just having to string it together against really good teams back to back, because that's what you got to do in the playoffs. So just excited to see how the team responds. Yeah.
Insane that 17-4 is even a realistic possibility. That's on the table somehow. You tell any Wolves fan that before the season started, it's like, wait a minute, what's
and then that happens. And then, if you're 17-4, you're 13 games above 500. Then if you go 500 the rest of the regular season,
it's crazy.
You're looking at a 50. I don't know. What is it? 52 and no, whatever. It's too hard for 50, 47-35 or something
high
like
40s,
that, which would for sure be enough to host a first round playoff series. So they've done a great job of taking advantage of of some of the more generous scheduling gifts they've gotten with, opposing stars being out, that it gives you some more margin for error while you're still kind of learning about yourselves when you go on a road trip like this.
Yeah. And it would be enough to hit the over, right, on the season total win total.
Was it 46?
I believe so. Yeah, I know we talked about that with you and Ben Beacon a little bit and Tyler. I'm almost positive 46 and a half, something right around there. Last one, then we'll get out of here. What's going around the rest of the league? What stuck out to you over the NBA the last few days, 48, 72 hours, kind of the Wolves and their spot in the West right now?
Yeah, I think that, the way Denver's been able to stay afloat without Jamal Murray has been really impressive. Just considering that I wasn't super bullish on their depth. I was more bearish there. And they just keep churning out wins when Nikola Jokic is in the lineup, man. He is unbelievable. But they just beat a Clippers squad that was playing everybody. And the Nuggets didn't have Jokic, Murray, or Aaron Gordon. And they still found a way to win that game. So, obviously, tip your cap to them. I think the Mavericks still staying afloat after that hot start, playing some pretty terrible teams. They're kind of starting to find a lot of rhythm with Kyrie and Luka, and then the Suns have just been a completely different team with Devin Booker in the lineup. They're still without Bradley Beal, so that's another kind of part of that fork that they can stick in you offensively when they get going. So Booker, I think, is probably at this point the second best player in the Western Conference right now, which is incredible to say. And then the Kings have just been a super fun team right there behind them in the 6th spot. And then after that, I think we're kind of seeing the Rockets come back down to earth a little bit. We're seeing the Warriors just in a complete free fall that it has everyone just, going to DEFCON 1 or DEFCON 5, whatever the most serious one is.
Whatever the worst one is. Yeah.
And so that's been crazy to see. But yeah, I think the teams the Wolves are really going to have to watch out for are the Pelicans and the Suns. And because and the Kings too. I think those three teams are the ones that are going to give the Wolves the most problems if they see them in a playoff series, just with how much speed and quickness and force all those teams play with, and how they can really spread you out and shoot the ball from all over the floor. So it'll be really fun to kind of see more of this conference take shape, I think, as every team kind of has some opportunities to have, a really easy part of their schedule, a really tough part of their schedule. And then also work out some of the injuries that they've had. Like the Pelicans have been super injured to this point. The Suns have been pretty injured to this point. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what all those teams look like when they're kind of fully constituted and get a little bit of a runway to find a rhythm and start to figure out, who they're going to be as teams for the, majority of the season and down the stretch into the playoffs.
Yeah, well said. Well done tonight, as always. Always love talking Wolves with you. They moved to 14-4. Maybe most importantly, though, like we talked about, gain some confidence knowing they can still put on a show, put on a clinic without the help of Anthony Edwards. Huge game from Non-Cat tonight. As always, huge shout out to everyone who joined us on tonight's postcast. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Quick reminder as well, go check out all of Jack's work on Twitter at JRBorman13. That's going to do it for us tonight, though. Next on deck, it's the Hornets this Saturday, tip-off 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Join us again right here for the entire recap. Follow all our work over on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. And one more plug, if you haven't already, go check out Ben Beacon over on the Locked On Wolves podcast as well. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.